All right, guys, take a little look-see at this. This is the rumored Big 12 expansion that I touched on in my last two videos. The Big 12 trying to form their own super conference to stay relevant, as we're seeing the major shift in college football, the SEC and the Big 10 forming their own super conference, the Big 12 trying to be proactive. And guys, you take a look at this tweet. This is with Utah, Arizona, Arizona State, and Colorado leaving the Pac-12. And there is the map. So those would be the four schools that would join the Big 12. And I did misspeak earlier when I said BYU was an independent. They are joining the Big 12 as part of the Big 12 trying to counteract the Texas and Oklahoma thing. And then they would also add and poach teams from the Pac-12. And this would completely dissolve the Pac-12 conference as we know it. And the Big 12 would move into being the third most powerful conference in college football and in college basketball, behind the Big 10 and the SEC. Of course, we're waiting for the decision from Notre Dame. We all expect Notre Dame to accept and join the Big 10, possibly within the coming weeks or within the coming days. I would imagine they'd want to get this done as quick as possible because Oregon has to get out of the Pac-12 before they sign a new TV contract. And, the Big Ten wants Notre Dame's decision before they decide what they're going to do with Oregon, Washington, perhaps Stanford, although I think maybe Stanford does go independent. But overall, the four teams that they want to poach are Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah. And Utah is going to be a very good team this coming year. Arizona, they haven't been good at all. I think they have like one win in conference the past 2 years. Arizona State, they're a party school. They win like 6 games a year. And then Colorado hasn't been very good for a while. But this would be just the Big 12 trying to remain relevant. You already are adding a good independent team in BYU, Cincinnati. West Virginia is kind of one, but UCF is a really good addition. I mean, guys, you take a look at this map. Again, this is not a conference. I mean, you've got a team from Florida, you've got a team from Ohio, you've got 2 teams from Arizona. Again, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and it's all based on money, and I am not blaming the Big 12 for this at all. They're trying to stay afloat. The Big 12 is simply trying to be relevant. This goes back to the SEC getting greedy when they were already the best conference in college football, and they decide to poach the 2 best teams from the Big 12. And then the Big 10 says, listen, actually it was USC and UCLA going to the Big 10 because of how bad their TV deal was, and they said, we want to join. Look at how great their TV deal is. USC and UCLA are making 3 times the amount of money they would be making in the Pac-12 with the Big 10 now starting in 2024. That's why this was all fast-tracked. They fast-tracked this so much. 2 years and they're gone. They got this year in the Pac-12, next year in the Pac-12, and then UCLA and USC are out. That just goes to show you how money hungry these people are. And they're like, as soon as possible. We don't care about competitive balance. We don't care about how our roster structure is. We're going to be facing teams from the Northeast, possibly snow games, 40-degree games. It doesn't matter. All that matters to these teams is money, the competitive balance, college football, college basketball. It doesn't matter. These teams, these programs are making their decisions based off of college football revenue. College football revenue pays for everything, and this is just a new development on the rumored Big 12 Super Conference. It's been a rumor I started it no, I didn't start it, but honestly, I just thought of it myself, and it seems to be pretty legit that the Big 12 is thinking if the Big 10 gets to 20 teams with Notre Dame, Oregon, and then maybe a Washington, Stanford, And then the SEC responds, like I said earlier, by adding the major players from the ACC, although the ACC has that contract, they got to work it out. The ACC has a crazy, horrible TV contract that's signed through 2036 that Clemson currently is in agreement to, and they would have to get out of that, which would be very hard legally. If you have a contract agreement through 2036, that's another 14 years. How are you going to get out of that without paying an absurd amount of money? I don't know how that works. Maybe if they all went together, like if Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina all agree, and then it would also probably be Duke, although I cannot imagine Duke in the SEC, but I don't know how that would work, because you would not want to split up North Carolina and Duke from conference. You'd want them in the same conference due to the basketball rivalry, but I don't know. I've heard North Carolina is wanted by the SEC. That was a rumor, but either way, even if North Carolina doesn't go to the SEC is going to want to poach the major ACC programs in response to the Big Ten taking Notre Dame and possibly Oregon and maybe a few other Pac-12 teams. That would leave the Pac-12 completely wide open, and you would have this new Big 12 that's formed already, because they lost the 2 teams, but they've added the 4 new ones. Now they want 4 more teams. They want a 20-team Super League themselves, and the current rumor is Arizona State, Arizona, Colorado, and Utah. And I think the best team out of those 4 would be Utah. In my opinion, out of those 4 programs, it would probably be Utah. And then I don't know what this means for a program like Washington State or Oregon State. This is the problem. Like, what happens to those programs? Do they just fade into irrelevancy? Again, this doesn't just affect college football, also college basketball and all the other sports. So, if you're Oregon State, or you're Washington State, or you're one of these other bad, Pac-12 teams, you might just get run over. The Big 12 is going to be filled up. The Big 10 is going to be filled up. The SEC is not taking teams from the Pac-12. That makes no sense. They would just take ACC teams. This could be a major problem for programs like Washington State and Oregon State in particular. If these teams cannot latch on and join one of the big 3, because right now it seems like starting in the year 2024, we're seeing the birth of 3 super conferences. You've got the Big 2, which are going to be the top of the line, and then you've got the 3rd super conference, the Big 12, and then I don't know if we have sub-conferences. Maybe the ACC turns into a sub-conference. Maybe the Pac-12 turns into a sub-conference. I'm not sure, but this is just the Big 12 trying to stay alive and trying to survive at this point. And they're seeing that what the Big Ten is trying to do, they're trying to form a super conference. Obviously, if the Big Ten wants Notre Dame, then they're trying to form a super conference. You've already gotten USC and UCLA, and they want more. And then in response to Notre Dame going to the Big Ten, we will see the SEC take all the ACC teams, and this is going to happen when it comes to Notre Dame joining the Big Ten. I did a video on this maybe within the next week. It doesn't make sense to wait till next year because Oregon needs to know now before their TV contract kicks in. I don't know when the negotiation for their new TV contract within the Pac-12 is happening, but Oregon doesn't want to be stuck with a massive TV contract in their own conference, similar to the way Clemson currently is with the ACC. The ACC could try and stabilize and could try and just keep the teams they currently have, because at this point, Notre Dame joining the ACC is a complete pipe dream. It makes no logical sense. It makes no financial sense. If Notre Dame wants to join a conference, it's going to be the Big Ten. It's going to be. So if they don't want to be independent, they want more money, they're going to go to the Big Ten, and they're going to get 5 times more in TV revenue because their current TV deal is $15 million with NBC. Each Big Ten team with this new super conference is going to be at $100 million. Now, again, I'm sure if Notre Dame renegotiated their contract with NBC, they could get about 25 to 30 million at least. That's still not anywhere close to the 100 million they would get if they joined the Big Ten. And the Big Ten is supposed to have the biggest, most lucrative TV contract now with USC and UCLA. If the SEC gets Clemson, if they get some teams from the ACC, maybe they can get a bigger one. I don't know. It's an arms race. Who can make the most money? It all comes down to that. Remember, college football is one of the only college sports that actually makes programs money. All the other sports operate in the red, and college football pays for every sport. So these programs are just solely making decisions off of how can they make as much money and as much profit in college football. So guys, it'll be very interesting. It's good to see. I mean, it's better than having just two major super conferences, seeing these teams like a Utah, who's a really good program, have a chance to join their own super conference. And if you expand it to a 12-team playoff, absolutely some of those teams from the Big 12 can make the playoff. They're going to be facing each other. There's some good teams within this new proposed Big 12. It seems like a lot of average. I'm not going to lie, guys. We'll see with Cincinnati, Luke Fickell, how long is he going to be there? UCF is a good team. BYU seems to be a good team every year. Baylor's having a really, nice resurgence. Kansas State is decent, or Oklahoma State is decent. Utah is good. So that's a good conference, and that's what you got to do. You got to try and stay relevant, and that's their own. It seems like they're reacting to these two major conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC, trying to form super conferences, and they're saying, listen, we can poach teams from the Pac-12 because these teams are going to be desperate, especially if Oregon also goes to the Big Ten, because then the Pac-12 is left with nothing. They're left with nothing. The Pac-12 can't pivot. You could say, well, the Pac-12 loses two teams. You could just add Boise State, San Diego State. If they also lose Oregon, they're screwed. Now you lose three of your best teams. How are you going to replace that? With the Mountain West? You're going to poach teams from the Mountain West? Come on. So this is just where we are currently at, guys. This is a major college football situation. It's breaking. We will continue to update, guys, but make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.